everyone, and welcome to Anonymous Talks. Anonymous Talks is a platform where anyone can share their story anonymously for the purpose of helping others going through a similar experience. It is also a platform to have conversations and discussions to address topics, some of which are controversial. I'm your host, my name is Dana, and I'm also a life coach who loves helping people find the power within themselves. Today, we have an episode on the power of the mind. We will be discussing how our thoughts affect our reality and how a change in our mindset can change our life. My guest today is Danos Parpotta. Is that right?
It is absolutely
Parpotta.
right.
Great. Who is a Rapid Transformational Therapist, more on that later, and the founder of Building Ethos, which is a learning and development consultancy that offers unique human skills training and corporate wellness solutions, which are fully tailored to each organization's values. Danos, thank you so much for being my guest.
Donna, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's start by talking about the mind. So as we know, there's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So can you please tell us about the difference between them?
Absolutely. The mind is a very complex thing. There has many categories to the brain and the mind. Some of them are separated from left to right, front to back, top to bottom. But for simplistic terms, it's easier to imagine it as two parts of the brain. One part of the brain is the conscious brain, and this is also known as the thinking part of the brain. So this is the part of the brain which is responsible for things like decision making, critical thinking, rational thinking. Even having this conversation together, we're both using our conscious mind. Completing a project, innovating, critical thinking, it's all happening within the conscious mind. And it's very important. It's actually the reason why us as humans are the apex predator. Animals are very reactive to their environments. So if I give you an example, if you think about a cheetah, it has a very small head, very long legs, very lean body, and that's so that it can run fast and catch its prey, very reactive to its environment. Well, in the human world, we can have people who weigh 200 kilograms that can travel faster than a cheetah because we have the ability to invent cars. Mm-hmm. So that's the thinking part of the brain, very, very complex part of the brain. The other part of the brain, which is even more interesting, is the subconscious. Now, the subconscious is the feeling part of our brain. So these are where our values, belief systems, emotions, they're all stored here. Unlike the conscious brain, it's always switched on. And it always works in the background. It stores all of our experiences, just like a giant vault, if you think about it, of a memory bank. It's responsible for our survival, and it controls 95% of our behavior. So for example, we're having this conversation, which is the conscious part, but how you really feel about me, how much trust we've built, how safe you feel with me, well, this is the subconscious mind. And it's not very easily accessible. It's not like the conscious brain where you can tap into it whenever you want. Your brain only accesses the subconscious mind in certain situations, for example, when you're dreaming or when you're meditating or under hypnosis. During these states, the brain actually goes into an alpha wave state or a flow state, as many people would call it. So Dana, if you think about it, have you ever been engrossed in a piece of work and 6-7 hours goes by and you look at the time and you think, where the hell has time gone? Mm-hmm. That's an example of flow state. So we actually go into a state of hypnosis every single day without realizing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Something else to kind of think about. Have you ever started a task, or if you've made a resolution, like a New Year's resolution, only to give up after a few months? It happens to the best of us, happens to me all the time. Yeah. Or you simply can't start a task because of procrastination. Mm-hmm. You can't get going. And actually, when you want to start a task, you think, let me watch one episode of Ozark, and you end up watching 6 or 7. Yeah. So that's because your subconscious mind is governing your behavior. So there's something in terms of a belief system that's governing your behaviors. But I'll talk about that more in a little bit more detail. Yeah, mm-hmm. It's really interesting. So actually many people think that they need to change their habits, when in fact they need to change their belief systems. And their belief systems are all stored in the subconscious mind. You know, at work, we always talk about the collaboration, the importance of collaborating at work and the importance of team building. But actually, as humans, are we collaborating well with our minds?
Amazing question.
You know, that's something that we really need to start thinking about, because we spend most of our time in our minds, and for a majority of people, or for many people, it's not a happy place to be. So what's that dialogue like? How are we collaborating? How are we communicating with the mind? It's very important. And I actually work with many clients who are dealing with issues such as anxiety and depression. And many people actually believe that it's a chemical imbalance that causes these issues. It's just simply not true. Actually, the biggest cause of these issues are the harsh, critical words that you say to yourself on a daily basis. And when you repeat these words, your subconscious makes them your reality. And this is really important to know. I know we both love Tony Robbins, and there's many people that won't like him, but he said something which really stuck with me. He said, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So you can actually see so many people that have everything, but actually end up taking their lives and living a life of misery because they're not communicating with their mind well. And I'll show you an interesting study, actually. It was a study done by Daniel Kahneman and an economist called Angus Deaton. I think it was done in like 2008. And that he showed levels of happiness actually plateau on a yearly income of about 75,000 US dollars. Bear with me here. So 75,000 US dollars is the equivalent of 6,250 US dollars. And I've done the maths. That's the equivalent of 22,000 dirhams per month. So people that are earning more than 22,000 dirhams per month are no less or more happy than multi-billionaires.
Wow.
Yeah. So we all have the potential to be as happy as Jeff Bezos. He's no happier than we are. Because for many people that chase materialism, the bigger the house, the bigger the car, the more expensive the Rolex watch on your wrist. But actually you're getting no fulfillment because of the way you're communicating with your mind. And there's so many celebrities, as you've seen, Amy Winehouse, Heath Ledger, all of these people that have taken their lives because they don't have that level of fulfillment. It's because they're not dialoguing right with their mind. But when you think about the truly successful people who are happy, they actually have a belief system that's very different to those that are unhappy. They view the world very differently, and we call them the rules of the mind in Rapid Transformational Therapy.
The rules of the mind.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about that.
Okay.
What are the rules of the mind?
Very interesting. The rules of the mind are basically 4 fundamental truths. There are many rules, but these are the 4 main ones. And there are fundamental truths about how the mind works. I'll tell you what the 4 are, and then I'll explain them in a little bit more detail. So rule number 1 is your mind does exactly and specifically what it thinks you want it to do. It always does what it thinks is in your best interest. If you haven't got what you want, and you don't have behaviors that you want, it's a telltale sign that you're not collaborating well with the mind. And I'll explain that in more detail. Rule number 2, your mind is hardwired to move towards pleasure and away from pain. This is how habits are created. I'll give you an example. When babies are crying, they feel distressed, and when you feed them, they feel relaxed, and often they go to sleep. So they move away from pain and towards pleasure. Rule number 3, which is my most important rule personally, the way you feel about anything is always down to 2 things: the pictures you make in your head and the words that you say to yourself. And this is a really important rule to remember. We'll come back to that. And finally, number 4, your mind loves what is familiar. It's programmed by repetition and always seeks out what's familiar. If you want to succeed, I'm going to give you a statement here to remember. If you want to succeed, you must make the familiar unfamiliar and the unfamiliar familiar. So what are the words that you're saying to yourself on a daily basis? What are the words that you hear from your parents from the ages of 3, 4, 5, and 6, which have had a lasting effect that becomes familiar? You need to move away from that, and you need to chase what's unfamiliar to make that familiar. Definitely. So let's look at rule number 1. Your mind does exactly and specifically what it thinks you want it to do. The mind cannot distinguish a positive thought from a negative thought. Whatever you tell the mind, it goes towards like a beacon. It believes it. So your mind is always listening to your language. Pay attention to your dialogue. You know, whenever I'm at work and whenever I hear people in the coffee shop, I am one of those people that sits in coffee shops and just listens to people's conversations. But I hear words like, this job is absolutely killing me. I can't cope with this pressure. My boss is an absolute nightmare. This stress will be the death of me. And when you use words like that, what you're really saying when you say things like, I'm dying under pressure, is you're telling your mind that you don't want to do it. And actually, if your mind thinks that you don't want to do it, guess what? It will encourage you to procrastinate. It will encourage you to bunk off work. It will encourage you not to apply yourself. Your mind locks on to every word you say. So even things like, I would love a week off work, or I would die for a week off work. What do you think your mind would do to your body?
It will make you sick,
Absolutely.
probably.
It will give it to you in the form of illness. Or if you're saying, I really want to get out of this presentation, I will do anything to get out of this presentation.
Ooh, anxiety
There
or
you
like
go. Migraine, stomach ulcer.
stomach pain, yes.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about kids, and becoming a parent, I've really noticed this. Kids are fearless. They don't have fear coded into them. A lot of people talk, especially in the Mediterranean culture, which I belong to, and possibly in the Middle Eastern culture, we have this talk about generational curses. Oh, your grandmother had this and so do you. This kind of talk. There's no such thing as generational curse. It's simply the language that we use. So the language that we're telling our children, it codes their belief system. So if you haven't got what you want, it's because you're telling your mind it's too difficult, it's too hard. Think of all of the elite athletes that have succeeded. Think about Muhammad Ali. He was saying he was the greatest before he even won a championship belt. He used to say, I am the greatest. He hadn't even had a boxing match at that time. It's amazing the way they dialogue with their mind. And this isn't positive affirmations. This is collaborative communication with your mind. It's very different.
Let me ask you here something, because many people think that they do not want to say that they're the greatest, or they do not want to seem too egotistic, or like, like they're too proud, for example, and they see as being humble is the right way to go.
Yeah.
But then this humbleness, like the question is, what do you tell yourself to be humble, and how does it?
It's a really good question. It's different for different people. For me personally, I won't go around saying I'm the greatest, because it's culturally as well, and due to my upbringing, it's just not part of me. In fact, in the UK, we're designed to be very, very kind of downplay everything. We use a phrase, don't get above your station. And that's been coded into us, but recognizing that you are enough, that you are capable, so instead of saying, I can't cope, tell yourself something different. I have phenomenal coping skills. I can do this. I can get through this. And I think that type of language, it remains humble, but it also gives you that drive to actually achieve more. Yeah.
Nice.
So actually collaborating with your mind is important, and you have to link pleasure to what you want. Tell yourself, I want this, I've chosen this, which leads on to the second rule of the mind. Your mind is hardwired to move towards pleasure and away from pain. Be careful with what you associate pain and pleasure to. If you associate pain to public speaking, then that's going to be quite difficult to rewire. If you talk about drug addicts, they get massive pleasure to taking drugs. Every time they take drugs and they get high, they associate that feeling of acceptance. Nobody accepts me in the world, and therefore this drug is the only thing I have. And they link massive pleasure to it. And it allows them to escape from their reality. But there's also some people that link pain to a lot of the things that we find pleasurable. I'll give you an example. A lot of people hate standing on stage and performing and singing, but there are other people that absolutely love it. They enjoy all of the attention. So you've got to be very conscious on what you link pleasure and pain to. Flying business class for some is hugely pleasurable, but actually if you give a business class ticket to someone who's afraid of heights, you're going to get a very different outcome. So if you're doing something that's hard, link massive pleasure to the outcome. Say, this work is very, very difficult. Setting up my own business is difficult, but I want that freedom. And it's very important that you're linking that pleasure to the end result. Very important.
This happens with manifestation as well, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about manifestation. It's a very powerful thing of the mind, and I'll give you the science behind manifestation as well. Rule number 3 before we move on to manifestation, because this is quite nicely linked to it. The way people feel about anything is always down to 2 things: the pictures you make in your head and the way you speak to yourself, or the words you say to yourself. So in Rapid Transformational Therapy, there's a fundamental truth that sits above all of these rules. And it's this: your thoughts become your feelings become your behaviors, and your behaviors become your events. So let's imagine a 3-year-old child that sees a dog for the first time. Kids are curious, right? Most kids are going to start laughing, and they're going to run up to the dog. Now let's imagine whilst this child is running up to this dog, their father actually shouts and says, don't go near the dog, it's dangerous. And through the panic of the parent, the dog reacts on that and then starts barking frantically. Now what's happened is the kid has associated his father's anxiety with don't run towards the dog, with the dog barking. And what do you think the outcome would be? Fear. So what's happened is that child has created an imprint in their subconscious that every time I approach a dog, that dog's going to start barking, And that's anxiety from my father, which means I'm not safe. And I say this because that was me. I was scared of dogs until the age of, I'm not going to reveal my age, but early 30s. I had a huge fear on dogs. And when I started throwing myself into the power of the mind, I transformed that with a little bit of help from my friend, who helped me overcome my fear of dogs. And to people that love dogs, dogs are a man's best friend. That's the saying, right? So it's your belief system that you attach to it that's very, very important.
Definitely.
So to be successful, you must change those pictures and the words also to change the outcome. I'm not sure if you heard of the Roger Bannister effect, but I will explain it to the listeners that might not have heard it. Roger Bannister was the first man to break the 4-minute mile barrier. He's a long distance runner, and for many years, people thought that to break the 4-minute barrier, you would have to defy the laws of physics. It wasn't possible. And Roger Bannister brought into his practice or his training visualization. So what he was doing is he was picturing himself running past and through the finish line, and he pictured the time having 3:59. Lo and behold, he broke the 4-minute barrier in 3 minutes 59. But actually what's really interesting about that is it went from people thinking it was impossible to 7 people breaking the 4-minute mile barrier within the first year of Roger Bannister doing it. And within 3 years, 57 people did it. So the power of the mind is actually, if you believe you can do it, it will change your feelings, it will change your physiology. And it's very, very, very powerful. Do you think Lionel Messi feels small when he gets on the pitch? He feels like an absolute giant. Do you think Ed Sheeran thinks he's too ugly to perform in front of thousands and thousands of people? No, he tells himself that he's an amazing, amazing artist and he can do it. So changing your thoughts can instantly change your physiology. Now I'm going to show you manifestation in the real world right now, okay? So what I would like you to do is just close your eyes, Dana, and for anyone else that's listening to this podcast, just close your eyes for just a moment. And I want you to take your left hand and I want you to put your palm facing the ceiling. Right, brilliant. Now I want you to imagine that I'm placing a huge lemon, fresh from the Mediterranean, into the palm of your hand. You're rubbing your thumb across the skin and you can feel the roughness of this lemon. You put that lemon to your nose and you inhale that lemon and you can feel the freshness of that lemon, the zest from that lemon. It's irresistible and you decide to take a huge bite of that lemon. You bite right into that lemon. And what you're doing is you've got that piece of lemon in your mouth and you're swirling it around and around and around and you're letting that citrus juice just flow inside your mouth. Right, so now what I would like you to do is just open your eyes, Dana. I want you to talk to me about the experience that you got now in your mouth.
Saliva.
Saliva everywhere, to the point where I can even see you swallowing and myself swallowing. That really is a basic form of manifestation. It's literally visualizing something in the future that you're bringing into your present reality. Now the lemon's not real.
Your body reacts if it's there.
There's no lemon. There's no lemon in this room, It's in your mind, and your mind is now creating a different chemical reaction in your body. And that pretty much what manifestation is. But before I go on to manifestation, I want to tell you about rule number 4. Your mind loves what's familiar, and it's programmed to seek out what's familiar. So I'll give you an example. If you grew up in a household where you witnessed physical abuse, so for example, if your father was hitting your mother, could be the other way around as well. As a child growing up, that becomes familiar to you, that becomes acceptance, and you think that that should be your reality. So
that's normal.
Absolutely. And what happens is, naturally, the type of man, from a woman's perspective, if you're to witness that, the type of man that you seek becomes actually a reflection of your father's behaviors. So whenever you hear the comment, I only date bad guys, I only attract bad guys, well, that's because you've made that familiar. I always have my wife commenting on me, and this is something that I'm working on even now, is she says that you always internalize your own issues. Whenever you're going through some struggle, you don't talk about it and you just kind of become a recluse, you go away in the corner and then you come back, and I want to be part of that problem solving with you. Lo and behold, that's exactly how her father reacts. Her father and all her family members will say exactly the same. He internalizes his pressures, and that's something that we all have to work on. It's the way we dialogue with ourselves. So you've got to make the unfamiliar familiar. If you're not getting any success with Tinder, for example, you've got to try something different. You won't get the woman or man of your dreams going to brunch. No, you might do, but the odds are stacked against you. So make dating men with high self-esteem familiar and it will happen. Now, this rule is very important to self-love and self-care. Because like I said, in the UK, we use the phrase, don't get above your station. We're a culture that's conditioned to reject praise. Even for the Middle Eastern culture, we reject praise a lot. So when people used to say to me, oh, you're such a good trainer, I used to brush it off. I used to say, oh, no, I'm not. There's much better people than me. And actually, during my time as a trainer, I actually used to apply for jobs that I knew I was overqualified for. I actually applied for jobs where I'd be taking a pay cut because it was a reflection on my self-esteem at the time. And I just remember once I was doing a training session and a woman who's a very dear friend of mine right now and who's probably a real catalyst of me setting up my own business, she turned around to me, she said, what are you doing? You should be running your own business. You shouldn't be here. And it really stuck with me. And it was quite a profound moment, actually. And you see, my self-esteem at the time, it just wasn't high enough because self-esteem was unfamiliar to me. Now, when people give me praise, I receive it and I'm really grateful because I know it's true. I'm great at my job. It's not arrogance, it's acceptance.
Exactly.
And it's based on your level of self-esteem, the regard that you hold for yourself. And I think that's really important. So making praise familiar is the whole concept of manifestation.
Yeah, accepting it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned what is manifestation.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the concept of manifestation is basically using the rules that I explained to you to bring the future into your present awareness. And there's actually scientific evidence to suggest that when you focus on something, it activates a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. So stay with me here. Let me give you an example. Have you ever fell in love with a piece of fashion, piece of clothing that you've not seen anyone wear before, and you say to yourself, I've got to have that, it looks amazing. You buy it. Next day there's a house party. You go to that house party. There's someone else wearing exactly the same piece of clothing, or you've seen it on the street the moment after you've bought it. Has that ever happened to you?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me. Many years ago, I used to work for BMW, and BMW own Mini. And Mini was such a brilliant brand that just spoke out to me. And I always fell in love with the Mini Cooper S, and I always wanted one from a really young age. And the minute I started falling in love with that car, I used to see them all like on the road every time. And that's a basic concept of manifestation. That's pretty much what it is. But I have a bit of a different opinion on manifestation. I'm not too keen on the word manifestation, and I'll tell you why. I prefer the word pay attention. Okay. Because when we talk about manifestation, it's not the word, it's the attachment to the word. People often assume that they don't have to do anything to bring something into their awareness. So in other words, we've read some fantastic books over the time, but the whole concept of writing a check and visualizing it coming into your bank account, yeah, okay, that can happen. But actually, this is all about the law of attraction, right? And the law of attraction, I think, is a wonderful concept, but there's a word in the word attraction, which is the most important. It's action. It's one thing to visualize something, but it's another thing to put the building blocks in place to make that visualization actionable. It's not just about hope, it's about hard work as well. And we've learned from having our parents such hard workers, there's some honor towards that. And I always like to combine the hard work with the visualization, and that's very, very important.
Definitely. And also when it comes to manifestation, because some people can say, like, I've been working hard towards this. For example, working hard toward getting a job. That's something that a lot of people work towards, right? But then they do not. So here the thing is, what are they visualizing or what are they telling themselves about the job?
Yeah.
And I've noticed that people tend to link, you've mentioned pleasure and pain.
Yeah.
They tend to link both to the same goal or to the same result, which is, for example, getting the job.
Yeah.
So if you tell yourself, I want the job and I really want to change my current job and I want this new job, but then you tell yourself, yeah, but what if I get a horrible boss? What if the culture there is not good? What if, all the what ifs?
Yeah.
This can actually tell your mind that I actually do not want this. And then your subconscious mind will just not know where to go or what to do.
And you're so true. In fact, Marisa Peer, who's the founder of Rapid Transformational Therapy, she says, which is another rule of the mind, that your mind can't hold conflicting beliefs. So a lot of people say things like, I really, really want to lose weight, but God, I have such trouble getting motivated. That's a conflicting belief. I'll give you another example. The gym memberships increase tenfold in January, and by March the gym's empty again, because you can't get great results with average habits. You have conflicting beliefs. To join the gym, it requires motivation. To continue working out 5 days a week for the next 3 years requires inspiration. So you've got to make sure that your behaviors are completely aligned with what you want. Otherwise, you won't get what you want. Remember, rule number 1, the mind can't distinguish a positive thought from a negative thought. So basically, if you're saying, I don't want to feel stressed, you're really telling yourself, bring stress upon you. What's the reframe to I don't want to feel stressed?
I want to feel happy, or whatever the opposite of stress is.
I want to feel happy, I want to feel confident. I want to feel empowered. So you've got to be very specific with what you tell your mind, and you're absolutely right.
Use the words that you want to target instead of not. And I also know this about the power of the mind, is that it does not accept negatives, as in, I don't want. No, it hears stress. It hears stress instead of not stress.
It can't distinguish the don't. It focuses on the stress.
Yeah.
The stress is the thought. What's the feeling that happens in your physiology? What's the behaviors, and what's the event?
Exactly.
You're stressed out, sitting at home, watching Ozark. Nothing against Ozark, by the way.
This is rule number 4, right?
Yeah.
Like the words that you use, and also, since we're like visual thinkers mostly, whatever words we use that trigger a picture in our head is what our body will react to and what would make happen.
Yeah. Visualize yourself in that position that you want. But don't say, I want a promotion. Promotion to what? What is be specific.
Yes.
Visualize yourself doing that, and then put the action in place.
Yes.
This isn't woohoo stuff. This isn't fluffy stuff. This is stuff which is grounded in neuroscience. So it's very important.
Speaking of neuroscience, and the third point I think that you mentioned, familiar.
Yeah.
It was the third, right?
The fourth. It was the fourth one.
It was the fourth?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is familiar to us? Because I was also reading about the brain and the neurons and everything. So anything that we're used to, like, the pathway in the brain, it increases and it strengthens the more we do it. So anything that is familiar, it actually becomes easier to go that way instead of building a new path that goes maybe, and this is like goes towards building new habits. It's going to be tough in the beginning until it actually becomes, I can't remember a time where I didn't do this.
There's a wonderful man who's got a great podcast, Joe Dispenza, and he's very much in this line of work. He talks about the concept of neuroplasticity. So what is that? You've probably heard the term before, that neurons that fire together wire together.
Yes.
So literally what you're doing is, when you're focusing on the familiar, you're creating a neuroplasticity, that the neurons in your brain are changing and is moving and bringing that thought into your conscious awareness. And the more you think like that, the more it will change your behaviors. There's a very good study that suggests that the salary that you're on is an average of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with. So, if you want to break out of that kind of society that you're in at the moment, then you've got to change also some of the people that you communicate with. It's very, very important. Surround yourself with people that talk great conversations, varied conversations. Sometimes I just kind of, when I'm listening to people and they're for 30 minutes, they're talking about, their brand new car and their watch. It's great. It's lovely to have that. Don't get me wrong, but just change the type of conversation that you immerse yourself with. And what happens is your brain is expanding. We call it expansion. You are expanding towards, some people like to call it a greater version of yourself. I call it expanding to your potential. And your potential is infinitely increasing. You get to a level and then you realize, oh wow, there's another level.
Yes.
And you're constantly expanding because you're making that familiar.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit more about RTT.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is RTT? You're a Rapid Transformational Therapist, so tell us more about that.
Yeah, so Rapid Transformational Therapy, or what is known as RTT, it's actually a pioneering therapy which is based all around neuroscience. It was developed by the top UK therapist, Marisa Peer. Amazing woman, so interactive with everyone that has studied this course. She's constantly in contact with everyone. And it basically combines the most beneficial principles of hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, NLP, or what is known as neuro-linguistic programming, and CBT, also known as cognitive behavioral therapy. So it delivers extraordinary, permanent change from physical, emotional, psychological pain. And this is done by reframing our core belief system from our subconscious. It changes our beliefs, it changes our values, it changes our habits, emotions, which are deeply rooted in our subconscious. And by rapidly rewiring this neural pathway, this is the concept of neuroplasticity, we have the ability to replace outdated belief systems and negative patterns of behavior, which allows room for new empowering beliefs. And this is where healing processes can begin. This is where you can get lasting change. It's really powerful stuff, and it offers unparalleled results. In addition, it works rapidly. That's why it's called Rapid Transformational Therapy. A single session can achieve really powerful results. Both children and adults can benefit from an RTT session. More complicated issues may require up to 3 sessions. But Marisa Peer always felt that the medical world always focuses on pain relief. So if you have a headache, you're given tablets and the cure happens, right? But actually, in the therapy world, that's not quite the same case. It's almost acceptable for you to swirl around in this feeling of pain for 10 sessions, 20 sessions, and you're just talking about the pain, but you're not actually fixing the pain. And, I'll give you an analogy. If you had a terrible toothache and your wisdom tooth was causing you so much discomfort, and you called your dentist and you said, I need this wisdom tooth out. And the dentist turned around and said to you, well, let's book a consultation and let's have 10, 12 sessions to talk about the pain, and then we can talk about how to extract it. You're probably going to want to punch him or her, right? Because you want that pain extracted. Absolutely. And this isn't a disservice on the therapy world, because there are some people that like talking about their situation, but there are also a lot of people that really, really want to overcome certain issues which have been bothering them for years, and they're done with it. They're finished. And what RTT is we use hypnotherapy. So we go into a very focused brainwave called alpha brainwave, and forget what you hear about hypnosis. Hypnosis is not a trance. It's not juju. It's not stuff that you see Paul McKenna doing. That's entertainment. The type of hypnosis that we do, you feel extremely relaxed. You're very, very focused, and you have a heightened sense of awareness. But the only thing that it allows us to do is tap into the subconscious and communicate directly to the subconscious mind, which you can only do in alpha wave state. And hypnosis is a way to get there. It's very powerful stuff. Gets to the root cause and it deals with it. The sessions use hypnosis very effectively, and we communicate directly to the subconscious mind. And I actually got into RTT for the corporate world. I see a lot of people struggling at work, and I always think, how can I add value to the people that I train and the organizations that I work with? And actually, organizations have a big part to play in this as well. It's not just about having a mental health week and tagging it on LinkedIn and getting 10,000 likes. What are you doing to the employees that actually have the vulnerability and the courage to actually say, I need help, I'm struggling, my work-life balance is in a complete mess. Do you have someone that can help you? And that's one of the main reasons that I got into RTT, and it's very fastly becoming the main bulk of my business, I must say. It's very important, and it's all due to the situation that we've been in with lockdown. I think, again, thoughts become feelings, feelings become behaviors. Look at the media terminology. Look at the language that's being used in the media. Social distancing. It's not social. We can still be social on Teams. It's physical distancing. So let's get the wording right, because now people are becoming socially anxious.
Yes.
Imagine what our children are going to be feeling in 3-4 years' time, where they've spent most of their developing years in lockdown. It's worrying times, and if we can change the language, we can change our behaviors.
Definitely. Danos, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the knowledge and all the wisdom that you've imparted on us.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.